Hey guys, Kidron here, and today I'm going to be introducing you guys to some shader info. This is just a basic shader. What it's meant to do is become an X-ray. So when an object is going through a wall like this, it will just render a different color with an altered texture if you want. And it also will not have any lighting calculations done onto it. So therefore, it will just be a singular color or texture color, but it won't have any shadows like this kind of thing. So how do we start with this? Well, first things first, we're going to need to make a shader. And for anyone who doesn't know, a shader is basically the way that game engines and programs render an object. So what I mean by this is we'll pass in some information and it'll render the object from that information kind of thing. And if you need to know how to create a shader, it's just like any other asset. We go into our assets folder, right click, create, and underneath the scripts options there'll be a shader, and we're going to create the default Unity standard shader, or standard surface shader as it's called. We're doing this one because Unity has a lot of stuff that's auto done in this one, like lighting calculations, shadows and stuff, and we're going to need that for the base part of the object, but the X-rays will take that function out. So just create that and just name it something like X-ray. And then we're going to create a material to go with this. So right click, create material, and X-ray. Okay, now I'm going to drag this X-ray onto the sphere and my cube over there. And you'll notice that we have just a standard X-ray material right here. It's actually not using our shader yet. So what we want to tell it to do is up here in shader, you can go to custom and to the name of the thing. And if it didn't pop up, if it wasn't in there, simply just drag the shader onto the material and that should auto assign it for you. Okay, next we'll go into the X-ray shader and actually examine it now. Okay, so you'll notice something about these shaders. They're a lot like scripts in some ways. How I think of this is this line right here, it's the class, the variables, and then the singular function that the shader can have. Oh, and if it can't do this properly, like there's an error in it, it'll try and fall back onto a diffuse shader. So, okay. So how do we access properties? Properties are accessed through this simply by writing like this. So say I make a color variable up here, you have to down here say fixed 4, which is how many values basically a color has. It has 4 different values. So think of it as just 4 floats almost. Color, the exact same name, and it will auto grab that parameter for us. So we're going to need a few things other than getting rid of all these comments that we don't need. There we go. Okay. So right now our object will simply do the base minimum and render white right now. That is until you assign it a texture. These are all textures from Unity standard assets, so just import those if you want to test it. So like we could put the cliff on it, and as long as the object has UVs, it'll be rendered fine, kind of thing. But there's something that we want to change about this. The fact that the object disappears behind other objects. That's normal behavior, that's to be expected, kind of thing. But we kind of want to take this behavior and throw it out the window almost. So what we're going to do in our shader is actually really simple. Our normal one starts here, and we're just going to copy this from C program to NCG, go down to here and paste it in, and then rename it. So X-ray. So now we've got 2 CG programs running, our normal and our X-ray. Now to make the X-ray actually be an X-ray, you want to add one simple line up here before the C program starts, which is ztest greater There we go. So what that line does is when it's testing the depth of the object, it will say that if the depth of the object is greater than anything, meaning it's behind something, it will render it on top, kind of thing. So just by doing that, you'll notice something. Our objects now render as if they're on top of the object at all times. So we can put this underneath the floor and it still renders, kind of thing. Now this is some pretty weird behavior, but we're getting closer to our Xray now. So now simply we need to add 2 more variables up in the properties section up here. First, we're going to copy color and main text, and we're going to just space these out real quick and paste it right below. Now this is going to be the color for the color and the texture values for the Xray. So what we're going to name this is underscore X color and underscore X text. And the strings right here that you see are just the names that pop up in the inspector. So I'm going to say Xray texture and Xray color. Okay, so now that we got that, we actually need to access these 2 variables. So if we scroll down into our Xray, where it says sampler 2D main text, we can actually just replace this with sampler underscore or sampler 2D underscore X text, because we only need to access the Xray texture that we're going to be using. Next is where it says fixed for color. We're going to be replacing that with fixed for underscore X color. And we're going to get rid of half glossiness and half metallic, because we do not need those. You could also get rid of them down here, because those lines will actually give us errors later on if we don't. And to finalize the textures, we need to actually copy our underscore X texture and apply it right here in the text 2D. Reason for this is because this is sampling from a certain texture, and now it's sampling from our Xray texture, and it'll be outputting a color value, and we're going to times that color value by our tint color basically, and that's how the object will be tinted. So times underscore color should now become times underscore X color. So now if we just simply file save this, you'll notice our objects turned white whenever they're behind something now. Well, one, that's because the color here controls it, but also this texture value right here, if we say the grass, now whenever it's behind an object, it's basically rendering grass. I don't know how well you could see that right there. Okay. So now it's rendering the grass, and we can actually tint the grass now with this, which is real nice. So if you want, you could do both, or you could leave the texture slot empty and just color it something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it empty, and I'm going to just color it a light orange, basically. Okay, so we've got the basics of our Xray down. It's working pretty well, but there's a few problems. It is working with shadows, and it's being darkened by shadows. Like, this isn't an effect that an Xray shader should probably have. If you want, you could leave it as is right now. You can be done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out all the lighting and make it an unlit. So how we'll do this is right up here where it says our hashtag pragmas, we're going to actually be getting rid of hashtag pragma target 3.0 because that's for lighting calculations. And we're going to get rid of full forward shadows. This is what generates the shadows on the object. So just by getting rid of that, now we have just basic lighting and no shadows. So next, we want to get rid of standard. Standard is doing some standard lighting calculations, and we want it to be actually unlit. Now there is one main problem with this, and that is that unlit doesn't exist yet. So we actually have to make it. So for this, right above the surface function, we're going to be making another function that returns a half 3, or a half 4, I mean. It's going to be called lighting. I can't spell today. Lighting unlit. And make sure to name it exactly that, because Unity is searching for the lighting, and then the unlit portion is the second part that goes up here, kind of thing. And its arguments are going to be a surface output of S, and then a 1/2 of light direction, or light dir, and a 1/2 of A10. You can ignore these last two arguments. You need to have them in there because Unity will be passing in values for them, I'm pretty sure. But we're not going to be actually using them. So we need to return a 1/2 which is basically a fixed 4 or float 4, just slightly altered. So for this, we're going to be making a 1/2 inside of here called col, standing for color. And we're going to say its RGB value is equal to s.albedo, which is the color of that spot on the object, kind of thing. And then col.alpha, we can just say that is equal, or col.a, I mean, sorry, is equal to s.alpha. Okay. So now we've got it basically doing unlit stuff, but there's, and that actually should be fine. I'm trying to see if I am forgetting anything. I don't think I am, but yes I am. Okay. So the last thing we need to do is our surface function took in a surface output standard before. Now we're trying to throw it in a surface output, because right here, and that's kind of a problem. So what we need to do is just simply take out the standard portion on it, so it just becomes in-out surface output O. And then there's one more. Oh, I forgot the thing that's basically the most important. On our lighting unlit function, we are going to be actually returning col. And there we go. That's better. So now our lights don't affect our our lights don't affect our unlits that much. The reason it looks like it's changing color, I believe, is because it's brightening it, but it doesn't give it any special shadow effects on it. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. And that is basically it for the Xray shader. So now we've got a basic Xray shader that we can just throw objects behind stuff and they'll be rendered a different color or with a different texture. So either way you want this, it works pretty well in my opinion right now. But be wary because this does have to render the object 2 times because it's going through 2 different passes of rendering the object. So you can almost imagine it as every object being rendered twice. At least every object that has this Xray. So, but that's it, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully you learned something. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.